welcome to another exciting adventure on Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and as you can tell from the background, I am back at my normal studio area. So, thank you to everyone who watched while I was on a road trip and doing an experiment of episodes on the road. So, thank you for all your support and tuning back in as I'm back at home base, so to speak. And tonight I have a guest who I am so excited for you all to meet. She is amazing. We've talked a little bit offline and always having fun when we talk. So I am so excited to introduce you all to the one, the only, amazing, talented Stacy.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for agreeing to come on.
Thank you.
So, for all the people who have been under a rock or, just getting into the world of not the mainstream, so to speak, I'm not even sure what we call our world anymore. But can you give a little bit about your background so people get to know you?
Yeah, so I am a psychic. I'm an experiencer. I didn't understand what was going on growing up, but found out later about MK Ultra, the secret space program, and it was more of connecting the dots at that point and going, oh, all of this is starting to make sense, and I started to have an explanation for what was going on. And I'm just, a lifelong learner too. I'm a healthy skeptic at the same time. I mean, I feel like if things weren't happening to me, I probably wouldn't believe it either, but I've just seen too many weird things and had strange things go on that I know to keep my eyes open and my ears open and be sensitive and also protect myself because energetically there's a lot going on out there. And yeah, so just happy to be here and chat with you about whatever you want to know about my experiences. So
That's very cool. And I like how you hit on saying protecting yourself, because that's something I think a lot of people hear, but nobody really, shares how to protect themselves in this world. Because, I mean, talking about like SSP, MK Ultra, you're getting hit on a spiritual level, physical level, mental level, emotional level. It's like there is no escape, it seems like, from them. So, what's your suggestion to people who may be wanting to protect themselves from that?
Sure. So, I can only speak from my own experience, the things that happened to me. My earliest recollections are of being a very little kid, and abductions were always part of that, my memories. So from a young age, I was always very terrified, and the experiences for me were always very scary. Probably about the time I got to high school, I started to, first of all, I grew up in the 80s, so I was an 80s kid, and this really wasn't a common topic. So it's so funny that it's so prevalent in the world today compared to, people were barely talking about ghosts back in 1985, kind of thing. So, but I just remember always being very terrified. And like I said, around the time I got to high school, I did grow up in the South. So if you said anything weird was going on, automatically people thought demons, spooky things, something bad. And so that really prompted me to start looking into religious things, what would be more esoteric, if you would. I was raised Methodist, but we weren't really practicing. But I did have a Bible, and I started reading it when I was 12. And I don't remember the exact experience, but I remember one night when the beings had come into my room, and I started to pray, and they really didn't like it. And so I became really conscious of the fact that if I said the Lord's Prayer or if I called on Jesus, a lot of times it was an instantaneous end to whatever was happening to me. And then as it evolved and I became a little bit stronger in my understanding of that, I mean, I wouldn't say that I didn't have faith before, but actually calling upon Jesus and the protection of the angels, I realized I felt like they were actively fighting me, almost trying to stop me from being able to say it or even be able to contemplate, get the thought in my mind. It's like if I could get the word to materialize in my thoughts, it was almost like they were trying to scramble my thoughts so I couldn't say it. And so I used to joke that Jesus was my safe word, just because I didn't totally understand it. But around the time I was 19, I also started to understand that sometimes, you know, I would see spirits or I would see ghosts, and sometimes they would also get attached to me. And I would have to do clearings to get their energy out. And so I started to realize there was a real correlation between the behaviors, even though I think they're distinctly different things. I don't think ghosts are inherently what we would consider aliens or interdimensional beings, although they could be. And I honestly feel like it's the only reason I'm still alive, just based on the type of attacks and the things that I've gone through, both in physical altercations with people or things that have happened, as well as spiritual things. I mean, I feel like, you know, what I'm really feeling in my heart right now to talk about is those nights, maybe when I was alone in my room and instead of, you know, just going to sleep, being flooded with negative thoughts or terrible, I should do something to myself, or just the things that, you know, they might not have control over your free will, but they can try to trick you into doing something. So if you can just remember in those moments that you're feeling dark, that they don't actually have control over you, and you can tell them to leave because they don't want you to know that. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, that's a really great point is we talk about free will and we talk about how nothing can take it away. But what we don't talk about is all the ways it can be circumvented. And so I think we leave people with a false sense of security of, hey, you know, nothing can take your free will, so you're good to go. You don't need to worry about things. But like you're saying, yeah, you know, you can be tricked into giving up free will in a single second and not even realize you've given it up.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think we're dealing with entities or energies or beings that have had, you know, millennial of experience of manipulating people. And we're, you know, I'm just a frail human. You know, I'm not, I like to think I'm smart and strong and all of these things, but I think keeping myself humble and having some humility about the fact that I'm not necessarily stronger. I just have to remember that they can try to trick you, or they'll try to, you know, almost like strong arm you like they're the mafia. You know, there's an element of that, you know, they play dirty, they don't fight fair, and they have their own agendas. So, you know, I do think people should be more careful and not just ask anything to come in, because I've been to CE5 and people are like, I'll take anything that wants to show up. And I'm like, not me. No, thank you. So, you know, but I've learned the hard way. And I think, you know, in some regard, it's good to experience something so you learn for yourself. But there's other lessons that are a lot bigger that if you can avoid them, I would just avoid them altogether.
It's funny you say that about the CE5 and people's reaction because being a paranormal investigator as my start, I would always hear people going, use our energy to come in and do this. And I'm like sitting there and I'll even verbally say, wait a second,
Mm-hmm.
use theirs. You don't have mine.
Yeah.
You,
Well, and when you think about like esoteric, I don't know if you can still see me because you froze. But it's like the old vampire myth. They can't come in unless you invite them. So tell them to stay out.
this is, and we're back.
Hi, I don't know when you lost me. I'm sure someone doesn't like our conversation.
Oh, I know. I was talking about how somebody was offering up my energy without my permission. I was like, no. And then it just disappeared. And they were like, my system was going, you don't have internet. I'm like, yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if you heard me, but I was just saying I think there's a reason we have stories like the vampire myth where they can't come in unless you invite them. So tell them they have to stay out and they have to leave when you tell them to. So shoo them out. Although like I said, I know a lot of people are trying to bring them in because they want to have an experience. So
Right. And I always like to say, like, when people are doing the CE5 thing, like you're saying, anyone come in, I'm like, yeah, anybody but the triangular craft, because those are ours, and I already deal with them, so don't really need them to show up.
well, they're
Let's
probably
get
up
the
there
other one.
anyways. They always seem like they're around. So
Oh yeah, they're like the little friend that never goes away. That's the nicest way I could put them.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen them though. I mean, when I was in college, I went to school at the on the coast, and I would sit on the beach at night. And I did again. This was before I really connected the dots between the esoteric side of life and our government or whoever it is. But I just would sit on the beach, and it's like you could tell they were there in a way because to me they always almost look like in Star Trek when something's cloaked. It's like you kind of can tell there's something there, but it's not really like it just looks transparent, but the sky looks a little off. And then I realized like I would sit on the beach and I'd be by myself looking at the moon and I would be thinking about stuff and I was getting answers. But then I started to realize it seemed like it was somebody sitting not that far away, you know, up there in a craft. And a couple times they did show themselves to me. And I was like, again, I didn't know it was a person at first. And then I was like, oh, okay.
And I have an interesting question that just popped in my head as we're talking, because we're talking about all the weirdness that becomes apparent when we're looking into stuff like this. And I'm wondering if, because of being in the SSP or MK Ultra or any of that, we tend to notice Mandela effects more than most people. And one example is, I distinctly remember growing up, and you'd look in the sky. During the day there was the sun, at night there was the moon. And one day I was outside walking my dogs, like within the past 5 years, and all of a sudden it's like I look up and I'm like, the moon is sitting there right in front of me. It's noon. How is the moon in the night, in the day sky? How long has this been this way? Have I just been living in a dream all this time? When did the moon become visible during the day?
I mean, I know that it would happen when we were kids, but we were always told that like it would only happen like once a month or something. At least that's what I remember in science class, but I don't even know if that's true because I agree with you. I see the moon all the time now during the day. And I've
Yeah,
also noticed that sometimes because the moon is oriented, it looks like I don't know direction from you, but like, the little rabbit or the man in the moon always faces the same way. I know that I've gone outside and it literally looks like it's upside down. Like the orientation of the craters are different.
right.
And I've seen that. And I know I'm not the only person that's noticed that. So there are some freaky things with the moon. So I don't know if I think it's hollow or not. Like, I think I'm reserving judgment on whether I think it's a spaceship or something else, but I'm sure it's not what we think it is.
Well, when it comes to the moon, the one big thing to me that I get everyone tripped up on, and nobody can explain this, is we send shuttles to the moon and we say, well, they're going into the dark side of the moon, so we have to wait to communicate with them when they're back on the light side of the moon. And I go, You realize we put satellites around the Earth to allow us to communicate 360. We've been going to the moon since the 60s. There are no satellites around the moon to communicate to people who are in a life and death scenario. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they put communication satellites around the moon to talk to the dark side? And everyone's like, well, they just don't spend the money on that. I'm like, you do realize, if something happens, like the Apollo 13, God forbid, they're on the dark side of the moon and, something hits the shuttle, causes an air leak, they gotta be able to fix it. What are they gonna sit there and hold their breath and go, okay, we got 10 more seconds before we can call Houston. Hold
Mm-hmm.
your breath. Well, let's not, don't breathe because we gotta preserve what we got.
Yeah.
It's To me, it just seems so ridiculous that everyone's okay with that scenario, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
something's wrong.
Well, I mean, unless they're not telling us the truth, I don't think we've been since either the late 60s or the early 70s. So maybe they just didn't think it's important. I don't know. Because I do know they, like, to your point, they've sent probes up, but I don't know. Maybe there's, I could speculate. I don't know why they don't. Maybe there's not enough gravitational pull from the moon, or maybe we didn't really go to the moon. Who knows? It could be
Well,
any number of things.
yeah, I do know they shot a rocket at the moon, and when it impacted, they really caught the harmonics of a
Mhm.
bell,
Yeah.
which, I'm sorry, if you're hitting a solid object, you hit a rocket here on the planet, you don't get a bell tone unless you strike metal. So, how is the moon being dust, rocks, dinging like a bell? That was like science's major blunder, is because now everyone's like going, wait a minute, the moon's metallic if it's
Yeah.
dinging. And that was quickly disappeared, and that story got buried. Just like, when we hit warp speed, remember all the headlines? Scientists have cracked warp speed, and then next thing you know, nobody ever hears about warp speed anymore.
Well, I guess that was something I missed it. So they hit it before I saw it because I didn't know that we got that fast either. So,
It was like 2 days in the news. Scientists are like, we have achieved warp speed, and then it was gone from history.
oh, well, I think I've even read stories. They've said that they can teleport particles now, but they don't really talk about that either. That they were able to
Oh,
teleport like individual protons or something. And then they just stopped talking about that too. So they hide a lot of things from us.
yeah.
It gets released and then they silence it.
My favorite one of those is the cloning Dolly the sheep. She like disappeared, and everyone's like, "Oh no, they just stopped cloning." I'm like, "Really? You think they stopped at a sheep and just said, "Okay, we cloned a sheep. We're done. We can wipe
Yeah.
our hands. We've achieved." I'm like, "No. They went and figured out how to clone people. They figured out how to clone all kinds of things." I highly doubt they stopped.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I would imagine they were cloning humans before they ever publicly cloned the sheep, since usually science is like 50 years behind. Like what we see in the mainstream is way behind what they're doing behind closed doors. It like leaks or someone figures it out and then they end up marketing it.
Right, like the internet, they're like, or cell phone communications, satellite communications, they're like, all this is new. And it's like everyone in the military is like laughing at us because they're
Oh,
like,
for sure.
we've been using that for 30 years.
Yeah, like standard RSA, or what was RSA encryption, which is like the standard encryption Google uses. They had that in the military in the like World War II essentially, and then it was rediscovered in like the late 80s and then marketed. So
I agree, and yeah, they're I think their second blunder was giving access of the internet to the people, because we could all of a sudden talk to other people around the world, and stories that they told us started to unravel. Like, oh, these people are like a third world country, and you're talking to them, and they're like, you guys are doing better than we are.
Yeah.
Who's the real third world country here? Or we're,
Well, and then also anybody who wants to create propaganda had unfettered access to entire groups of people that they couldn't get a hold of before. Propaganda, not necessarily, I just mean anything that's not like the sanctioned talk track, and I think that cracked a lot of the foundation open. And it really, I think it was a blessing and a curse, because to me, I think that they have like totalitarian goals. But I feel like the fact that we do have what little bit of like open forum that we have right now has helped slow down their agenda in a way. I think it sped it up. Like they tried to do things faster because they were compensating for the fact that people are waking up. I mean, talking about how you didn't even talk about ghosts, or we barely talked about ghosts in the 80s. I mean, it's crazy to me that people are talking about openly government conspiracies and aliens and the tunnels under the government, the government has under the cities. Like there's so much that people, as someone who was experiencing this her whole life and couldn't talk about it, and suddenly everybody wants to talk about it, it's amazing the difference that's happened in our world.
oh, I know. And I mean, I can't help but laugh because we keep talking about, the ghosts in the 80s, how the movie Ghostbusters just opened the floodgates, and everybody was like, all of a sudden, like, oh, it's cool to talk about ghosts now. It's because of the movie, I think, is what kind of, in a way, gave people permission to say, hey, I think I seen a ghost, because everybody knows the theme song to Ghostbusters. You seen a ghost, who you gonna call? And it's
Yeah.
like ingrained in everyone. And I think, I don't know your feelings on this, but I feel like not only is stuff like Ghostbusters, but sci-fi, the science fiction movement, I feel like they were the predecessors to what we call disclosure, because you look at all the movies from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's like you look at it now and going, oh my god, that's real, that's real, that's
Yeah.
real, that's real. But when we originally saw it, we're like, oh, this is too far fetched to imagine.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's 100% accurate. When I was in undergrad, I took a class called Metaphysics in Film. And actually, one of the teachers was the guy named Frank Capra Jr. So I don't know how much you know about movies and the movie business,
Oh,
but
yeah.
his dad, Frank Capra, made It's a Wonderful Life and Planet of the Apes. And Frank Capra Jr. actually made a movie called Lost Horizon or Paradise Lost or something. And it was like about Shangri-La, which that came out. It was like Lost, but it was a movie about the, the ancient story from Tibet or whatever. But what was interesting is he said that his father was actually one of the people commissioned by the United States government to make movies, both public movies and then also movies that they use for the troops and things about people coming back from the military. And they realized all the way back in the 40s the power that the movies had on people, as far as he didn't say manipulation, but when you think about the fact that they could use movies to get ideas across or sway opinions, like they've been actively doing that at least since the 40s. And then when you fast forward to, I guess I was 19 and I was actually working for this woman who was a professional psychic. Her boyfriend, actually was around the same time I was taking this class, her boyfriend did special effects for the movies because there was a big studio in the town where I went to school. And she had told me she had government contacts. This would have been like 1999-ish. 2000 maybe, and she said that they told her to watch the movies because they were purposely using TV and movies for disclosure and soft disclosure. So when you look back, like there was even Muppets in Space, like there's tons of movies about this concept of aliens, right? But then you have to wonder how much of even this is an agenda or a talk track that they're seeding into our consciousness because they want us to believe a certain thing. So I think I'm a really untrusting person, I guess I should say, because I just assume the worst when it comes to that stuff. I just think that they all have agendas. They all have something they want to get out of people or control. And I mean, I think some people have good intentions, but mostly I think it's nefarious.
I could agree with that. And I mean, even when you talk about like white hats and black hats, they both have agendas. I mean, we can't
Mm-hmm.
get around that. And so it's like, it's kind of like, not getting into politics or anything, but when you look at, who's running, it's like you don't sit there and go one party over the other. You're looking at who's the lesser of the two evils because everyone's on the same agenda. And so it's like, all right, so who is the one who will do the least amount of damage to us? That's who we want to put in. And it's like, it's so weird to go from a system where everybody was like, okay, we're either this or that. We're either believe this or you believe that, to where now everything has become so muddled. It's like you don't even know what to think or what to believe. And I even was shocked at we recently had elections in our city, and all the material that I found to look at who was who and what they stood for, all I could get is their name and what they were running for, and a little public notice of, yeah, this is, like you put out for anything. I was like, I couldn't tell who was what party they were, what their stance on certain things was. I was like, I felt like I was literally voting blind
Yeah.
because all that information is no longer available. And I know there's a reason for that.
What do you think the reason is?
Because some people call cabal or the shadow government or whatever you want to call them, they know they've been caught. They know their days are numbered. People are watching for them. So
Yeah.
if now you don't know you're putting them in, you're giving them permission to do whatever they're wanting to
Yeah.
do. And so you're have a 50-50 shot in some cases of electing one, or 1 in 3 chance, but you don't know. And so you could go, well, this name, sounds great, and their public statement was nicer than the other one, and you vote for that person, and they're into things you would never agree to be into, but you voted for them because you didn't know they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they're trying now to get people into political office that don't have the best of intentions in under the system of don't tell people what they do and are into, and we're none the wiser until it's too late.
Yeah.
And people have forgotten, and this is the part that surprises me because we've used it in the past, but when someone is put in office by an election, if that person turns out to be doing things anti what the people want, we had the right, the obligation, the duty to impeach and remove said person for the greater good of the nation.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody reads that anymore and nobody follows that. And they're all like, well, they're in office for 2 years or 4 years. So we'll just put up with it. And then when the next election comes, then we'll make our voices heard. And it's like, that's not how the system works.
Yeah.
And the even bigger illusion is we've been told we're a democracy. We're the ultimate force for democracy. And I'm like, we're not a democracy. If we were a democracy, we wouldn't have a Senate, we wouldn't have a House. It would be mob rule. Democracy doesn't work. We're a
Well, aren't we
democratic
technically a
republic.
republic? I mean, I know they say they use the word democracy. Like, I think that's using, I think they use word magic on us. You know, they use words that mean one thing, but they have an intention for it to mean something else.
Yeah.
Because I think we aren't technically a democracy, like you're saying, but they tell us we're a democracy and then they'll go, oh, but see, you're not doing democracy right, or this or that, you know? So I feel like they use words, they use our language against us. Like they weaponize our language against us.
They have. We're a democratic republic. And it's democratic because we elect. And it's a republic because we have the House and Senate. Elected officials who govern. That's what makes a republic. That's what Rome was. And we kind of know what happened to Rome. And or at least we know what they tell us happened to Rome.
True. Very true.
But I'm curious how I want to take a moment and sidestep a little bit. And in your bio, you talk about quantum healing and doing quantum readings.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what exactly that is. And I'm sure the audience probably, if they read your bio, were like, what does that mean exactly? How is that different from other modalities? So I wanted to give you an opportunity to explain that and share that so that people understood what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I think I believe that we live in, I wouldn't say a simulation, but I definitely think we live in this energetic world where everything is frequency. You know, they say that everything in this world is energy. And if you think about living in a multiverse, I really like the way Joe Dispenza talks about it, but it's the concept that, in a multiverse, every possible outcome exists, right? And so what you're really trying to do is align yourself with the frequency of the outcome that you want. And so through doing work with people, energetic work, readings, things of that nature, it sort of evolved on its own naturally. So I started working with different clients and I'd realize, really when I tap into someone's energy, I really, I ask God to protect us. And I ask to be, guided in what is for their highest and best. And then what has come out over time usually is it's almost like a stamp, line in the sand of where they are today. People have intentions and goals, dreams, hopes, all those things. And then I pick up on whatever's around the person and their energy as of today. And then we talk about, okay, whatever your goal is or what you want to work towards. And then I'm just tap into the energy and talk about, like, if you were negotiating a deal, you might say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And I would tap into the way I feel about it. And you kind of, psychic barometer, be like, I feel like this is good. This is bad. You could push for more money. Maybe you won't get as much with this person, that type of thing. And so, the concept of working with someone and helping you tap into your own frequencies in a way that helps you realign to your most desired outcome, or as close as you can get with your own energetic, karmic, whatever the person's working through, And then whatever comes in for them that's helpful advice or useful that they may not need to hear about. Sometimes also if, a departed loved one is with them or a pet or something wants to come through, sometimes I'll get messages from there too. So just whatever the person needs. It's really custom to dependent on the other person and how they show up and what they're open to.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious because I like to tie things in a nice little bow, if I can, so to speak, hypothetically. Did this come from your experiences in the SSP and MK Ultra to go, hey, I can break free, and if people want to break free of this, here's a modality that I've found that can help with that? Or was it just something you stumbled into and were like, oh?
Well, it's a good question. I wouldn't recommend doing whatever happened to me as a means of getting there, but I will tell you, so through the experiences that I had, my earliest experience, I do think they use cover memories, so I don't necessarily believe that a cartoon version of Space Ghost was standing outside my window, but I was like 3 years old, again, early 80s. It was Space Ghost Coast to Coast. His nemesis was a praying mantis looking thing, which I didn't even put two and two together till like a year ago because all these people see mantis beings. And I'm like, oh, that's ironic. Space Ghost and a mantis. Anyways, so Space Ghost was outside my apartment. My parents had an apartment at the time, and it would look like real life. So it was like real world, normal looking things. But there was a cartoon version of Space Ghost outside, and he was trying to get me to come outside. I went outside. I guess I went with him because I was all of a sudden in this place with people in lab coats in like a hospital setting. And they subjected me to a lot of trauma. They threatened to kill my mother. They showed me dead bodies. They would do things to me. And I really think just through, I don't know if disassociation is the right word, or I think that they pick people or breed people who have most likely undeveloped latent psychic abilities and other skills, and they put you through lab experiments to see if they can bring those out of you. Talking about movies and disclosure, when they had that one X-Men movie where they show how Magneto discovers his powers when the Nazis kill his mother, that was very triggering to me because I was like, that really took me back to being 3 years old and them telling me they were going to kill my mother. So I think it's very common for them to threaten children with isolation or separation from their caregiver. I'm going to kill your parents. You're never going to see your family again. Definitely, sexual abuse, things like that were going on. And I just always remember being afraid of them taking me. And I also think I must have had shown a great skill at whatever they wanted because they kept me around. They kept doing it. I was also, I guess now people refer to it as the GATE program. And when we called it academically gifted or AG at the school I was at, but I was in the academically gifted program. I got to go to all of the different, I went through the little testing that they had, and then I got to go like twice a week. We got taken out of our class. So, I was in all those programs, and I think they just monitor you, and they look for things that show signs for whatever they're looking for, whether it be high IQ. At the time, kids were just getting into computers. I really didn't care about that, but that was something, there were kids that really took to computers back then. And I think they were just cataloging and seeing what people could do. And I didn't really know. I knew things were going on because I would have dreams that would come true, or like I said, I could see things, or I wouldn't even be trying to be psychic, but I'd be talking to a teacher and I'd say something random and they'd get real mad because like, how did you know that? Like, you shouldn't know that, because people like to think psychics aren't real. And it wasn't until I was 19, I had a reading by a lady because I'd broken up with this guy, and it was an AOL chat room, and it was like free psychic readings. And
I remember those.
she gave me a reading, and she was like, you could do this. And in hindsight, it was also a great place if they were grooming people to be in the programs or continue it. They could monitor you really easily in an AOL chat room or IRC or ICR chat room, whatever those were. And she was like, you can read people. And it was, in a way, it was a lot more like remote viewing because I would, we didn't have videos or pictures. It was just screen names. And I just got really adept. Like I would just practice like all the time. I would offer free readings and it'd be like, just how you have your room here, but I'd pick some name and I would just practice tapping into them. And, she would be like, oh, try this or try that. And, I even went to the Rhine Institute because I used to live in Durham and I'd go to the remote viewing group and I was really good at it even, a couple years ago. And I noticed my the way that I would do my own work was very much in line with the way they teach remote viewing. And I'm like, oh, that's probably because the lady coaching me probably was someone who could teach that to other people, because I'm sure she was government related, because why did she pop up and gently steer me in that direction, right? So I just started to do readings for people and stuff like that, and it just kind of grew from there. That answered your question. That was kind of a long tangent, but
yeah, you answered it. And and I think about when we're talking about how some kids are more adept to, say, like technology than others, and the generations are coming in and kids are like, they can open up a computer and format it and run it, and our generation, we're like, yeah, I used to think I was good with the computer, but I can't hold the candle to this generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder now, in thought process of, are they that good at technology because of being exposed through programs, or are they legitimately like a hybrid who just knows that technology and can naturally adapt to it? And so it's one of those things. It's like, because I don't want to label them wrong, but at the same time it's like I can't help wonder.
Yeah, I think there's probably many things going on. I mean, I think one, exposure to technology in general makes you have more of an intuitive understanding about it, because I think humans in general are more intuitive and more psychic, generally speaking. Like, I think we have more innate skill and talent than we've been led to believe, because I think they've been kind of dumbing us down over the generations. I think there's epigenetic memory on our cellular level. So if your dad was good with computers, you might be better at it. There's no proof for that that I've seen, but I think there's something to that, And I think they are tweaking our DNA for different things, So it's entirely possible that whether they're alien hybrids or they're just humans who've had their DNA tinkered with, I think they're doing things to see if they can enhance certain things in some people or maybe shut things off in other people. I think a lot of it's more earthbound than I would like, but it's the way it is,
Yeah, because I remember in the 90s and 2000, in those, 2 decades, I could like get on a computer and I could find anything, and people would laugh and go, give me the most obscure thing, and I could look it up and then like super fast be like, here's your answer, here's this, and they're like, you actually found it? And I'm like, yeah. Now I get on things and I'm like, where is this? Why can't I find this? What's going on? It's like I feel like, have I lost my edge or whatever that?
I don't think it's that. I think they're scrubbing stuff. I mean, I was thinking about the other day how Napster, even just looking at that, like there's music files I know exist, like versions of songs I know exist because I had it until they wiped Napster. You can't even find the old versions of certain music. And I've seen it with more esoteric stuff. So when I was in undergrad, I had done a project in one of my religion classes on prophecies. And I remember, I was like talking to someone and I go, oh, I remember this prophecy that I did this paper on, and I can't find any source material now online of anything that remotely resembles what I remember that I looked up. I can't remember the whole thing, but I'm like, I know I can't find it. And when I started to notice those things, I was like, oh, I think they're quietly shutting off our access to information through the internet. That's like the whole dead internet theory. It's like they're slowly killing the version of the internet that we sit on. Because I know there's other intranets. Like the government has a private intranet. A lot of companies build intranets. I'm sure governments share intranets between themselves that are basically private systems that we're not invited to. So, but I think that the like normie population that we all fall into, I think they're definitely trying to limit our access.
Well, that sounds better than me just thinking I'm like
That's a perfect example,
losing.
right? Like they want you to think, oh, it's me, not oh, they took my library card away. They're literally see, your natural inclination is to blame yourself because that's how we're wired, right? Oh, there's something wrong with me. No, you're fine. They just don't want you to find whatever you used to be able to find in the past.
Yeah, I won't tell you the reason why I thought it was me. Because that is a program that is something that society put into us. Well, might as well just say it now, is because of age, getting up there in age, that it's like, yeah, they teach us the older you get, the less you can recall, and you'll forget more. And
right,
so
but that's programming to make you believe it, and then your belief reinforces that. So then you cause that to be unconsciously, you cause that to become your reality instead of being, I'm an infinite being of love and light, and I'm of God, and I'm untouchable. So the negative entities can GTFO, and I'm going to do amazing things. That's what our energy should be put on, because if we start doing that, it naturally shifts the paradigm, and that's what they can't control. And that's what makes them mad, because then that naturally takes the power away from them, and we don't have to try to fight them. Because I'm not going to go up against like a super soldier with a gun, right? But energetically, I can encapsulate myself in God's divine perfect love, and then they can't exist in the same space if they're at a negative frequency.
Right.
And so
it kind of tabulates why I said I like how you put it, because knowing that they're removing it, because I grew up metaphysical, and so I'm always looking at that and going, okay, yeah, I get these principles, I get this, I get that. And when stuff starts not working right, I go, I need to go back and re-look at my metaphysics side. What is, I need to fix this program over here because it's not working right. And knowing now, like you're saying, the program is running right, but they're removing the information. So you think the program is breaking.
yeah.
And so it's like another way of them circumventing, saying, yeah, you may not believe that program, but when the information's gone, you'll sit there and go, I know I'm not getting dumb because I'm getting older, but the information's not here. What's going on? And you start to go, well, what else could it be? And you don't ever think, oh, they're messing with me.
Yeah.
So there's actually 2 questions in the chat room for you.
Yeah.
Kids Like Hell she's asking, do you think being psychic in your normal life helps in the SSP?
I guess the answer would be yes, in the sense that I think it makes me useful to them, because I don't think they would keep me around otherwise. I thought I had gone dark. I felt like I hadn't had any experiences for quite a long time. And then right after the election, but before the inauguration, I had an experience where I was taken somewhere energetically, and they actually showed me the like inner workings of the underground tunnels that everyone are talking about right now. And I saw a map, and they showed me how like you can there's literally just doorways that you can walk into if you know where they are, and all of a sudden you're in the underground city complex that's like under all of the Earth's crust basically. So when that happened, like I said, that would have been back in November. I was like, oh, they do still come and get me because I hadn't had anything in a while where I had, was so aware of it. And I was like, oh, so I don't know if it's like I was just suppressing things and now it's bleeding through again, or if stuff's ramping up, but it gives me more of a feeling that things are ramping up. To answer the other question, yeah, people laugh at me all the time. I mean, when I was a kid, people thought I was a weirdo for sure.
Yeah, I had that.
I think people laugh less. It's more like I think it freaks them out because I think they want it to be true, but they also don't want it to be true. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure why I was shown that, in the sense that I've been sitting with it. I don't know specifically why they were doing that when they did it, but I do know that I feel like there's things going on. And so maybe it has to do with some of the shifts that are happening in the world that we're seeing. I don't really know, other than I've had other weird, like, before COVID, all of a sudden it was like someone said something to me about a pandemic, and they were like, the thing I heard that it was actually November then too, before COVID hit that spring, was, we haven't had nothing like the Spanish flu has happened in a long time, or something like that. Like, that was a download I got, and I was like, cool, I don't know what that is. I'll file it away for later, which is sometimes how it happens. So I feel like seeing the tunnels, it was very much the same thing. It was like just being shown that it existed. And I also got the distinct feeling that there is an energetic component. It's almost like it's not strictly physical tunnels. It's almost like there's energetic, like wormholes, essentially. So it's not just, oh, I can go down the stairs, take a train, and I'm in London, which I think that exists. But I also feel like I genuinely saw that you could teleport, essentially. So I could be in Istanbul, open a door in a closet, and pop out in like Tucson, like that fast. So I do think they have the ability to transverse our world that way. And that's another one of the things they don't want to have to share with people if that technology came out. Right now, I can understand it, because you wouldn't want random people teleporting into your room, but it's also not fair that they keep that for themselves.
Right. And it begs a question that I've been messing with and toying with, and I'm curious your viewpoint of, is I've had a lot of people say they read me and they go, "You've broken free of the program." And then I'll talk to other people and they're like, nobody breaks free. Once you're in, you're in. There is no getting out. And so I'm curious your point of view of, is the SSP something you can wake up from and prevent? Or is it something they've bypassed so many things that there is no way to really ever get free of it?
I don't know. I mean, I'll just be honest. I could just make something up and say, but I feel like my honest answer to that is, I think in general, everything on this plane of existence is more connected than we realize, generally speaking. And I do feel like, in a way, that they've hacked that system. Again, if you almost think of it more in the sense of a computer, right? But like our energy, like our frequencies, we're all connected. I think that they know how to hack that. I don't know. I don't know if you can. I mean, obviously it's something I wrestle with, because I feel like you constantly I have to wall myself off and pray and protect myself energetically, like constantly. It's not like it's one and done, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess you're out when they let you out. I don't know. I don't honestly know if you can just have the intention that they never mess with you again and they don't, or if they, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm glad you're being honest because I'm one of those people that I'm like, I don't want to hang my hat on and going, oh, so and so, has been more research than I have. And said, yeah, you can be free, and then I let my guard down because I think I'm free and get railroaded.
I mean, I definitely think you should live your life regardless, as hard as that may be, thinking that you're being messed with or whatever, right? But
Right.
it's just like I don't know if maybe I had subconsciously been asking or something was going on, or I'll need to know about the tunnel system, or maybe it's just the tunnel system is going to come out, right? I don't know why all of a sudden I saw that. But like I said, it had been a long time, probably 4 or 5 years now, since anything remotely of that intensity had come through for me. I kind of felt like maybe I thought, oh, I've aged out. They're not interested in me
Yeah.
anymore. And then, there's like those reminders where it's like, no, you're still tapped in. But how much of it is I'm tapping in with my frequency versus they're pulling me in? I don't know.
Right. And that's the other thing, too, is like you hear they always want the kids and they're recruiting the kids. So you're thinking, God, I am not a kid anymore. So maybe this is my chance to get out. And it's like, yeah. And it does beg the question, though, too, is with so many kids, why do they still need us that are no longer the kids?
Well, I think I have a couple thoughts on that actually. One, I don't think that they do. I don't think they probably don't recruit and use the same tactics that they used to use. I think for one thing, I feel like I've always had the impression where if there were aspects of someone like you or I that wasn't controllable, they might have wanted to fix that in the next 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, right? I imagine I've always had this thought. There's probably, as much as I might have talents and abilities, whoever or whatever Stacy 2.0 is, or 4.0 or 10.6, whatever version they're on, is probably stronger, faster, smarter, actually can walk through walls. Like I imagine every iteration evolves. But at the same time, there's still a value in whatever skills and talents you brought to the table, and I would imagine if people who are from the program but are still alive and kicking, they probably also want to know what makes you different, right? Because I think a lot of people didn't make it. And I think at the bottom, at the core, the people behind this are scientists, and I think they're interested in what are you doing, as mundane as it might be, right? Like, it's kind of like we're baby sea turtles. We all got tagged, and then they throw us out in the ocean, and then once a year they come and, oh, what's sea turtle 5 doing? Like, are you making it or you're not making it? Or you, yeah, I think there's an aspect of that's outside of the weaponization or the, whatever they're using us for. I think there's also this latent curiosity of like, what are our little test subjects doing? So why wouldn't they let you run out the clock naturally the way we would, like I'm saying, like sea turtles, they're still tracking things decades later. So,
Well, and as you and I referenced, we're both of the 80s. There was a movie series that kind of, I thought, maybe was a little glimmer of hope of, that we're still around, was the Terminator movies, where you see better versions come, but they still get their butts kicked by the original version.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, at least we could hold on to the hope of that, yeah, like if you're saying version 5 comes to you, you still have a chance to beat it because you're the original.
Yeah. Well, and I also think in general, as much as the pendulum swings from good to bad or whatever's in power, nature itself, I think, is still ultimately nature, God, like the world. It can't get so far out of balance that it topples over, right? So those negative beings behind the scenes are never going to get full control because nature in itself will just inherently, might not help me or you individually, but like in the grand scheme of things, to your point about that, like everything always balances itself out.
Well, and also I wonder because as much as we were programmed potentially to do bad, because we don't fully recall, or some do, but yet in our normal lives we're doing good. So that means we have the ability to do both, but brought ourselves to, say, the quote light side. Who's to say if version 10 came up to you and was like coming to eliminate you, and you're like, hey, why are you doing that? Look at what you could evolve to from the dark to the light, and look at
Yeah.
what you could do. I'd like to think we had that potential of, turning the tide and taking, because they're based on us. If we did it, that ability is within them. So
Hmm.
they could potentially do it.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple things. I don't know, one of the things about the program is I've kind of always felt like I probably have kids, but most likely it was used in a breeding program on top of everything else. But whether it's cloning or children or whatever, I do think there's going back to energy and frequency. And if it's a part of me, like I have spent time in meditation being like, okay, if you're my offspring or related to me, like get your vibe up, like mommy loves you, even if I've never met you, and try to be a good person. And, so I think there's something to that. I mean, I think it's another reason they don't like Nikola Tesla, right? Because he says the energy goes both ways. So to your point,
Right.
like as much as they can send it to you, it can go back to them. I mean, they might try to put stop gaps in place to keep that from happening, but the energy flows both ways. So, I think that, and I also will say, and this might just be the way I cope with things. I feel like if we're in those situations and they made us do something bad, even if again they tricked us into thinking we were doing it, I don't feel like I'm going to take I don't feel guilty for something somebody else made me do either under duress or when I really didn't have any control. Because in those circumstances, you don't really have control. If the way that they take over, the mind control and those type of things, they want you to internalize the guilt. So you beat yourself up for something, but you're not really the ones doing it. Because one of the other things I saw in like a reclaimed memory was the guy, I felt like he was CIA, but he was showing me, I guess it's scolarzepam, where they have some version of that. It's the dust that they can blow in your face. It's just like what the hookers in South America use on people, and they blow it in their face, and then the guy will go to the bank and take all his money out. Like that's the kind of stuff they're using on people. So if you're doing something like that's like the whole thing with P. Diddy and his parties, right? Like liquor people up, have them do naughty things, and then blackmail them. So, I mean, I just got to the point where I said, God, please forgive me for anything I've done. But also, like, I'm not going to let other people make me feel guilty if they do something to me, especially when I was a kid and I had no, like either I trusted them or they were abusing me or they were manipulating me. But I'm not going to let them make me feel guilty for that.
Right.
Despite how they want me to feel. Because for a long time in my childhood, like, and when I was a teen, I was very angry. Like, I had a lot of internalized anger and distrust. And not that I super trust everybody now. Like, I mean, I think I'm a happy person, but I still have those thoughts, but I say screw those people because they put it on us. And I also don't buy into that. Well, oh, your soul contract said you wanted to do that. Well, I revoke that and fuck you. Excuse my language, but that's how I feel about it because the stuff that I feel like they had us do or train for or be ready to do, that's on them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we could have even known that. So,
Right. Well, Stacy, we are actually 5 minutes over the hour. Do you need to go, or do you have
I
time
mean, I can
for?
stay for a few more minutes if you want, or it's up to
Okay.
you.
Kids Like Hell is in the chat room, and she commented when you said they can teleport into your room. She goes, "They can teleport into your room."
I
Like,
think they could do that when we were kids because I think that's how they would come get us when we were
yeah.
kids.
And then she goes on to say, I heard SSP slaves die around 50 years old. I don't know if that's true. I can say I know somebody who was in the program and he says he was like slave labor for them, and he's over 50, so I would venture to say I don't know that that's necessarily true. I'm sure it may happen, but I wouldn't say every slave when they hit 50 will be terminated.
I feel the same way. I know a woman who I know was in the sex slave, SSP sex slave side of things and Monarch, and she's I don't know how old she is, but she is an older lady for sure.
And I know about cord cutting, and so Kitslahel is asking if you know about cord cutting.
I do. I've done things to try to do that before, reclaim my energy. I feel like if I've heard about it, I've tried it. So.
And it raises an interesting question of in the SSP, because in metaphysics, when you cut a cord, you are severing ties to no longer sharing energy with that energy or that entity or that person. And I'm choosing my words carefully with this. If you go and you're an SSP survivor, if you cut that cord, it seems like you should get your freedom. But somehow it seems like no matter how many cords you cut, they reattach.
I think it has more to do with like generational trauma and the energetic ties. Like I think it says in the Bible that the sins of the father will go back 7 generations. And I've actually been working with this Native American gentleman about some of the stuff that trying to heal some of that. And he was saying a lot of what came up was also like Messianic generational things. So I think it's much more nuanced than just like you and I now we've connected. So there's like a connection between us. It'd be easy to sever the energetic frequency between us. Cause I mean, if this is the first time we've ever spoken, you know what I mean? Like maybe if we were in the program together, we might have a different attachment, but just, like in a basic level. But when you think about like the generational stuff you have with your parents, your grandparents, other people that you're more entangled with, I think it's far harder than just a cord cutting. I think you can release certain specific traumas through that, but I think with the intricacies, and I think most of the people, especially probably from our age group, most of the time, if you're in the program, they already had their eyes on you because they were watching our parents or our grandparents were in the military during World War II or something like that got us on their radar somehow, not knowing your story. I'm just saying that would be my guess based on how it works usually.
No, that makes sense. And I also, now that I think about it, think, the key to the cord cutting is you have unshakable faith and belief that that cord has been severed and ties have been cut. And because of all the mishmash of information surrounding the SSP, because nobody has the answers, it's constantly fluidly changing. We can't have that certainty and that 100% belief the tie has been cut. And so maybe that's why it keeps coming back, is because that doubt that's there of, you had those days where you're like, man, I had like something's bugging my ear. That's what it feels like whenever I was taken in the program. I guess I'm not free. Boom, there you're attached back to it. And so I wonder if perhaps maybe that's why the cutting cords doesn't work so well, because we can't have that 100% belief it is severed. If that makes sense.
I wonder though, like this just popped in my mind, like kind of like the idea, like we have this idea that you leave and you're just like one day like, oh, that's it. And you like put your coat on and you like leave and you shut the door and you lock it and it's done. But considering at least, I mean, it's something that probably starts from the minute of even conception or before, depending on how you're tied to the program. I mean, you're talking about trying to walk away from something that is basically ingrained in every aspect of your experience, whether you're aware of it or not. So it's like taking a soldier, it's like being a soldier on the battlefield. And you think about it, a guy might be in Iraq for 6 months and he might have PTSD the rest of his life. It's not a matter of just cord cutting to sever yourself from the experience, because it's something that it's, you know, I mean, it's not like a singular event. It's really like a something that's been there your whole life. So it's not just as simple as I'm just never going to go there again. Like it's almost like it just becomes part of you in a way that you almost have to accept the experience instead of thinking it's something you can, like, it's more about integrating the fact that that's a part of yourself than trying to not be that part of yourself. You know, it's like it just is.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like an onion, and what they call the onion effect of healing, where you have to do layer upon layer to get to the root element of it. That being in the SSP, like you're saying, you know, you may have had maybe say 100 missions, and as you're heal, you know, you clear one, well, there's 99 more.
Right.
You clear, you know, and you don't know how many you have. So you think you get to the root of the onion and find out, nope, still some more layers. And I know from personal experience, there are times when I'm working on something and I'm like, God, I've done clearings on this for 20 years. I'm getting tired of doing clearings on this. When the hell am I going to get to the actual root of this? And I feel like that's what they do with us is, you know, we have no idea where that root is. So we could have actually healed and cleared everything, but our mind still makes us think there's more there. So, you know, it's like we would never know if we would get to the root or not.
Yeah, and I think honestly, because of the nefariousness of their actions, you know, I think you also have to wrestle with the fact that you have cover memories and screen memories, and some stuff might be suggestions to make you think it's this thing over here when really it's this thing over here. So I think there's a lot of complexity to it. You know, I don't think it in a way is not ever going to be straightforward, because it's also because I don't know, like, I don't know about you, I've gone to therapists and trying to be like, oh, I had this weird experience, and they can't handle it. Like, I've gone through so many therapists. I have one now that I will say the lady is a lot better. She can handle it because she thinks aliens are real. So that's a big plus. But, you know, as a kid, like by the time I got to the 4th grade, my parents thought there was something wrong with me, or they weren't sure what was going on, because I kept telling them the aliens kept coming into my room, you know, from the time I was little. And by the time I was in the 4th grade, they had me psychologically evaluated, like, formally, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me except for the fact I kept telling people that were aliens. Again, this probably would have been like 1990, 87 or 8 by that point. You know what I mean? So it's just like, if you have no one to help you, you know, it's not going to be a straight line. But also, you know, you're talking about something that's much more complex than these straightforward things that happen, you know? And then, I don't know, maybe it's more of the, like, whatever the underlying trauma is, it triggered in you, you know, like Carl Jung says, everything we experience is a reflection of our relationship with our parents. So maybe go back and just, like, evaluate how you deal with both of your parents. And then, you know, maybe the guy in the space program was a reflection. It was really your dad's relationship to you. So if you heal that, that'll fix the other things or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Kids like hell, you don't worry about asking a lot of questions. We like that. So, and you're welcome that we're able to answer them. So keep them coming. And with that being said, this is a loaded question, actually. What do you think the purpose of the SSP is?
I've always had the impression it's a couple things. I mean, one, I think you had almost like kids that were playing around with matches when they first started these things that didn't totally know what they were getting themselves into. They started to realize they could do these things to people. And then I think it evolved over time. And I've also always had the distinct feeling that there's subgroups within these programs, and I don't think that they all have the same agendas. I think it started off with experimenting, doing things, seeing what they could get away with, and then it turned into, oh, I can do this neat thing to this person who will now go do this other thing for me, and they won't know about it, and it grew from there. And then I also think it was traverse the multiverse that we live. I think that there's a lot of experimenting and doing things to people. I mean, I don't know. Have you seen the movie Third Eye Spies?
I'm not sure that I have, actually.
You might want to watch it. It's kind of interesting. They go and they talk to the guys that worked at the Stanford Research Institute, and they were behind some of the programs, or they worked with the government on programs like the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. So it's like they're the people that worked on like the telepathic heart-stopping things. And there's this one part of the movie, and he makes a comment about how at one point when they started to realize that these type of things were real, they started getting all this money, and they had 13 different departments. I think it was either 11 or 13 departments from the US government that signed on to different programs with the Stanford Research Institute. And this is just them. That's not even like including Duke and all the other schools that were doing this. Like, I also feel like maybe Yale and Harvard were involved, even though they don't talk about that. So there was at least 13 different departments that had their own psychotronic studies going on at any given time. So they were all doing different stuff with their own different agendas. Because I've even been in circumstances where I feel like I've been surveilled or have bumped into someone from a different program who takes an interest in me because they realize something's different about me. And then it's almost like somebody comes over top and is like, hands off, And I can't explain it, but that's happened. And so that's another reason why I'm like, oh, so there's different groups here with their own agendas. And I think there's infighting in the groups. They spy on each other. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a whole complicated thing.
Well, and one of the purposes I think of the SSP, and it's something that makes sense to me, is like we talk about, there are programs where they're literally taking our seed and making hybrid kids. And when I ask somebody, well, what does that look like? And they go, well, they genetically engineered themselves to the point they can't procreate. So they are trying to reestablish the ability to procreate to keep their race going. So how do they do that? They have to take and put in the seed of a human, because we can procreate. We have that ability. And so there are programs that are the SSP that, it's nefarious because you're taken without your permission and used to create a being who can help this race, prolong its existence without your permission. So that's the nefarious part of it. Are you going and killing anybody? Maybe not, but that's the difference of, it's like we say, the lesser of two evils. It's still evil that they're stealing you to create another version of you that's mixed with them so they can go on, instead of you going onto a battlefield and dying or killing someone. There's difference in the programs. And so I don't know that there are any good programs, but I feel like it depends on who's running it, what agenda they have. If they're there to help like mankind growing up to our full potential and no longer being suppressed, yeah, I might want to sign up on that program and help that. But at the same time, you're opening yourself up to the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I mean, I also feel that the people that do this are involved in a lot of esoteric occult type things. So I really think it's also a matter of what do I want to align my frequency to? And I don't personally want to be involved in any, consciously anyways, any dark occult type thing. So if anything that I have conscious control over, I want to stay in the light, as much as I can. It's interesting when around the same time as those other things that were happening when I was 19, I was working at the mall and I had dyed my hair black. So I was going through this like goth phase. And I guess it'd be emo nowadays, but
Yeah.
I remember these two African guys walked by and they were like African Muslims and they came in and the guy was like, "Can I see something in the case?" And I was like, "That's fine. Yeah, I don't mind." And I was showing him and he was like staring at me. And at first I thought he asked me, he goes, "What do you think about magic?" And, I thought, I didn't know if he was just screwing around because I had like obviously dyed my hair black and I was being all like broody or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. What do you mean, like magic tricks?" And he goes, "No, you know exactly what I'm talking about." And then he said, he started telling me, he goes, he goes, "You're probably Christian." He goes, "But we're Muslim." And he's like, "Now think about this." He's like, "Christians are taught to fear Satan, but Muslims were taught that Satan fears us because of our devotion to God." And he said, "The time will come when you're going to have to decide how you want to use your magic. Are you going to use your magic for the light or are you going to use your magic for the dark?" And he's like, "Because remember, the dark will always fear you, but it wants to trick you into fearing it. So just remember when the time comes to choose wisely," something like that. And that really stuck with me because then when I first started to realize that maybe I didn't have anything to be afraid of, you know? And so I really feel like all of the stuff that's happening to people like us, they also want, because on the flip side, like in addition to being psychic, I feel like we bring extra energy or we can channel energy or we hold energy in a different way that's very useful to them if they're going to be doing rituals or other things, other naughty things, right? Like you might be really good at opening portals or gateways or whatever, right? So they're going to want to use us for that kind of stuff. Well, I consciously declare that I'm not available for that because I very much don't want to get involved in that kind of energy. I am going to definitely, right. I'm going to be a good witch, not a bad witch. Not that I think I'm a witch, but you know what I mean? It's like she asked Dorothy, she goes, "The only question that matters is, are you a good witch or a bad witch?" So, right. Just consciously do the best, always choose the light. Well, that's how I feel about it. I don't know what they're up to, but as long as I stay in the frequency of goodness, I try to keep my nose clean, as they say.
Right. And one movie reference, and I know we're getting close to the time, that I think also is a good summation of, what we could do is when you look at Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where they have all the grails out there, and the knight's one word of wisdom is choose wisely. And then what is the Nazi and the lady do? They pick the most golden jeweled cup because he's the king of kings.
Mm-hmm.
And he drinks and he's taken away and eliminated. And the knight simply goes, "He chose poorly." And Indy is looking at all the cups and he's like, and he goes to reach and then he goes, "Wait a minute. He's the carpenter's son." So he picks the cup of the carpenter, the most dull, absolutely the last thing you would pick. And he drinks from it and he's like, "You chose wisely." And I feel like it's because the way that I say it's more like we are is we're not going to sit there and go, "Yeah, let's, we're picking the grail. Let's get the most elaborate, we're going to take our time and think and go, wait a minute, who was this person? what cup would they really have, and not jump to what we thought the illusion of what they wanted us to think was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's a moment where I feel like, yeah, that was a message to the SSP is choose wisely, and that's what we do. We have the ability to choose, like you're saying, I only want to do things that are beneficial consciously. What happens when I'm unconscious? I have no ties to. That's not me. I'm being used, so I'm not responsible. But what I am responsible for will be this way, or I'm done. And I feel like they have to honor that.
I agree. I mean, I think as much as they don't want to admit it, that's been my experience. And that's why they try to go so hard after people, because that's the only control they have. Because I feel like if they didn't have the power to do that, none of us would be walking around. Do you know what I mean? Like it's some subconscious level kept them from just taking us away, you know? And because I think a lot of the times when you see people unfortunately that unalive themselves or do those types of things, like or they take drugs to the point that they can't cope or function, I think all of that is coping with the things that they're making them feel or do to them.
Right. Well, we are approaching the
And on
hour
that
and a
note,
half
right?
mark. Where can, if somebody wants to have a session with you or talk more about this, how can they reach you?
Yeah. So my website right now, it might still be up. It is in the process of being updated, but you can ping me at mandarinblossom.com. That's MANDARINBLOSSOM at gmail.com. Or Stacy at, yeah, that's actually the best place to get me.
Let me see. I hope I spelled it right.
I think so.
MandarinBlossom.com.
No, just at gmail.com.
Oh, whoops. Let me
That
correct
might
that,
be a
people.
website. I don't know, but that's just the email that I'm available
And
at.
is Mandarin IN or IAN?
IN.
Okay. Okay. So everyone forget the other one. Let's focus on this one. So thank you for coming and sharing with us your story and experiences, and hopefully we can have you back on. And
Yeah.
real quick, to Kids Like Hell, she was asking, how does she protect herself? We actually covered that in the beginning, so I'm going to selfishly say rewatch the episode. And the answer is there. And thank you, Kids Like Hell, for your questions, and everyone that in the chat room that came and joined us. Thank you, and thank you to everyone watching. And I want to leave you with this thought, Stacy, from my show and myself to you. Thank you for your service to humanity and doing what you do.
Well, thanks. That's nice of you. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. This was nice.
Yes, hopefully we can have you back on again.
Yeah, just hit me up sometime. Let me know.
All right. And I'll text this time instead of
I know,
sending
just because
all
I'm
the
never
other.
on Facebook.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a wonderful night, and thank you to everyone that's watching. And we are going to, if I can figure out, I'm having a brain fart. There it is. We are going to say goodnight to everyone.